Hey adapters, I'm Doug Parsons. I'm a partner at Cimpatico Studios where we live stream conversations about complex business and social challenges with professionals like yourself who are working on the same issues. Our shows are live streamed in front of a global audience of your professional peers on Cimpatico.tv. I'm building a new type of online community for professionals like yourself on the Climate Adaptation channel. If you're a regular listener of my America Adapts podcast, I think you'll find that we're taking our conversations about important problems, policies, and solutions to the next level here. And if you're interested in being a guest, we'd love to hear from you. And now join us for this latest episode. Hey adapters, today our guest is Sandra Kwak. Sandra is CEO and founder of 10Power, a certified benefit corporation providing renewable energy access. Sandra has an MBA in sustainable business from the Presidio Graduate School and has lectured at Stanford and the California College of Arts. She taught race, activism, and climate justice at San Francisco State University. Sandra will discuss how climate, environmental, and racial justice are deeply intertwined and how these systemic inequities can be addressed simultaneously. She explains the concept of fourth world development and how investing in the development of marginalized communities can move everyone towards a more sustainable future. Hey, Sandra, welcome to the show.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to this conversation, but I'm checking in with folks. How is COVID-19 impacting your work?
Oh, wow. In myriad
It's a
ways.
loaded question.
Yeah. So we actually were in the middle of a project when the pandemic started on an island off the coast of Haiti. And it is a solar powered water desalination system. So we were midway through construction when the lockdown happened in Haiti. And so we put a pause on the construction of that project and made sure that all of our crew had sufficient PPE. There's already some protective equipment that's involved in solar installations, but adding all of the COVID appropriate PPE. And we were able to complete that installation, taking safety precautions. And fortunately, we are now providing clean drinking water to up to 40,000 people on the island who previously did not have access to enough water, and just in the nick of time. So we were able, despite the difficulties, to complete that installation. And we've actually shifted our focus right now to healthcare facilities. So we're in conversation currently with the main hospital in Haiti that's handling the frontline COVID response. And we're looking at first providing energy storage because we can do that quick, low touch, fast to install, and that automatically renders the facility solar ready as soon as we can put panels on to supplement the renewable energy resource.
All right, so I want to come back to Haiti, but just first off, let's just start off. What is 10Power and what do you guys do there?
So 10Power is providing renewable energy access in communities that don't currently have access to electricity. And if you forget our name, you can just count your fingers. Our chant goes 10Power.
I like it.
And in Haiti, we're working on large scale solar project development and finance. So on the project development side, we're partnered with local solar installers and we're helping to implement international codes and standards and best practices, state-of-the-art warranted equipment, making sure that there's a long lifespan and a high-quality solar installation on every single project. And on the finance side, this has really been the missing piece in a lot of markets that don't have access to electricity. Because generally in markets that don't have consistent or reliable electricity, there's a ton of sun. So a lot of energy poverty is close to the equator. So we have this perfect storm where there's a lot of solar availability, but people simply don't have access to the capital to be able to install solar and pay it back over several years. So 10Power sources appropriate finance for commercial scale institutions and organizations to be able to transition to renewable energy and save money every single month as opposed to what they were spending on their diesel generator, gas, and maintenance, and transition to clean energy with the associated savings.
Okay, so what do you mean by fourth world development? What does that mean?
So fourth world is a term that I use in my TED Talk, fourth world nation building. And I think we're doing development backwards because everybody in the world is trying to get to first world status right now. But where do you go from there?
Right.
Zeroth world? And then in tech, we are constantly coming out with better and better iterations, right? It's 3.0, 4.0, iPhone 11. So I think in tech, we should actually be moving forward, third world, fourth world, fifth world. And it's actually the places today that are considered least developed countries that are on the front lines of innovation. And so the places that are suffering from the early impacts of climate change that we're seeing accelerating every single day this week with the hurricanes on the East Coast. And in the Caribbean, countries have been experiencing tropical storms, increasing sea level rise, and are really forced to innovate quickly. And so by adopting technologies on the front lines in places that have had the least amount of development to date, we will actually see innovation happening a lot faster and a lot of technology transfer happening from frontline community to frontline community, and also a lot of south to north technology transfer. So I think we need to be paying attention to the fringes right now and focusing a lot of attention on having frontline communities lead the transition to clean energy, because leapfrog development, a term that's used a lot in the industry, implies that we're on this trajectory that has to do with exploitation and industrialization, utilization of all your human and natural resources, pave over everything, move to suburbia, get a garage with 2 cars in it, then you can care about climate change. Right. And that's not necessarily a trajectory where we even want to be leapfrogging from point A to point C. We actually want to be going from point A to a completely new trajectory of theta times 9,000, where everything that we do is net positive for the environment, where we have buildings that generate more clean air than we breathe, where we're growing more food than we could eat, where we're actually sequestering more carbon dioxide than we combust. So fourth world is this ideology of really embracing indigenous technologies, frontline community leadership, and taking the whole world on a development trajectory that moves us closer to a regenerative future.
Okay, so when you think about the work that you're maybe doing in Haiti or I don't know other projects, so this ideology, how do you marry those two though? Is that just sort of implicit when you're working with these communities that you bring it, or is it sort of a parallel effort that you're doing wanting to have these conversations? How do you kind of integrate the two?
It's in the DNA of 10 Power. So the work that we're doing in Haiti is really coming from a humble learner perspective. The idea that people, locals in Haiti who've been working there for their entire life, know a lot more about the Haitian market context and the challenges faced in Haiti than any company coming from outside. And so what we're doing in Haiti is really working to fortify our local partners and to bring in any resources that they don't yet have and to uplift their expertise and knowledge of the markets. So our work in Haiti is really focused on uplifting our local partners, and we also are running a women's solar installer training program to help get more women and gender parity into the marketplace. So a couple of the aspects of fourth world development that we're working on in Haiti, in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, are reducing poverty, creating green jobs, gender empowerment, renewable energy access, and addressing climate change through technology, through renewable energy and energy storage.
Okay, so I saw that. So you have these specific sustainable development goals that you're kind of working with as an organization. Not everyone uses those international goals. Did you just feel it was a sort of appropriate language when you're, I guess, working with other countries to use those SDN goals?
There's a shift right now happening over time within the impacts community, both on the practitioner side as well as the investment side, where there's some level of standardization that's provided by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that has been challenging in the past, because there have been a number of different indexes and benchmarks for sustainable development, but they haven't been standardized across the industry. And so the beautiful thing about the UN Sustainable Development Goals or global goals is that it provides the framework that everybody can use universally. Now it's happening at different adoption rates in different communities, and so we found that it's very useful because a lot of the SDGs track to what 10 Power is doing. I know that the impact entrepreneurs who are working specifically, let's say, within communities of color within the United States may not have as perfect of a match with the UN SDGs. But for 10 Power, we've definitely seen a lot of benefit with having a shared language and shared set of metrics. And we're seeing that start to gain traction in the investment community as well.
All right, so you've argued that we can solve these issues of environmental justice, climate justice, and racial justice. That these things are intertwined. Maybe could you maybe give us a little bit of background on what how you I guess, define those things, and then if you solve those things, I guess together you're solving all three of them at the same time. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. The cracks in our system are really showing right now, and it's really a triple threat pandemic that we're dealing with here. And we're seeing COVID has exposed a lot of the inequalities in communities, especially communities of color in the United States, and inequalities between countries, and the impacts of different leadership styles in different countries. The second issue that we're dealing with, if you extrapolate what's happening within the United States, within the movement for Black Lives, and look on a global level, it's the second C, it's colonialism. We're still very much dealing with the impacts of colonialism in our modern society and the vast inequalities in wealth creation that over 450 years that families have been dealing with and communities have been dealing with on a case-by-case basis that tie into this greater systemic racial oppression. And the third pandemic that we're dealing with is so much larger, but underscores all of these existing inequalities, and that's climate change. So if you look at how all three of these interact, and you take, for example, Cancer Alley in Louisiana, which is an 85-mile stretch of fossil fuel and industrial polluting firms in communities that are majority Black, you see 50 times higher death rates from asthma, from cancer, and now from COVID-19. So the communities that have suffered disproportionately from the combustion of fossil fuels and have not benefited from the combustion of fossil fuels, that have been economically left out of the equation in the United States, and who are also disproportionately suffering from environmental catastrophe, like the BP oil spill, Hurricane Katrina, and now our health catastrophe of COVID. You see that there's just the same communities that are being oppressed time and time again by this intersection of various problems of these three pandemics of colonialism, COVID, and climate change. And it's happening on the global level as well. Where we're operating in Haiti, you see that over 70% of the population doesn't have access to the electrical grid. And even people who do have access to the electrical grid don't have reliable electricity. It blacks out all the time. Now look at Haiti's history. Haiti was the first slave colony to gain independence in 1804. And the French government in 1825 told Haiti that they owed them $125 billion, which Haiti had to pay them back over 122 years, leaving the Haitian government in debt since the foundation of the country. Wow. So we're seeing the vestiges of that now, all of these impacts, Haiti being the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, the seventh poorest country in the world. It's less than an hour flight away from Florida. It's so close to the United States, but we're still seeing all of these impacts of colonial oppression over time. And Haiti being an especially hard hit community by climate change, by the global pandemic, and also by this energy inequality, which hinders everything on an economic scale. Think about how much of a role that electricity plays in our ability to generate capital, wealth, and to communicate internationally and provide education like what we're doing today. So without electricity, without reliable electricity, it's very hard to advance your economy. So I see the opportunity to solve all three of these intersecting issues at the same time. And when you pay attention to the people in the economy who have the least, when you're making sure that there is justice for people who are really on the front lines, who are suffering the most, everyone else wins. Because if Black Lives matter, then inherently all lives matter. So you have to focus first on the places where people are being oppressed the most. And when we are uplifting every single person on the planet, every single life is sacred, then everyone will have a higher standard of living.
Well, tell us a bit more about the work you're doing in Haiti. And I think I understand this. And what I found interesting too is that you are a for-profit company and you're working in Haiti. And so how do you get sort of investors to kind of, fund the work that you're doing there? I mean, sort of justifying like this will be a wise investment for you. Tell us a bit about that. And so these are solar farms that you're working with down there. I mean, what are some of the things on the ground that you're doing?
We are a for-profit benefit corporation, and we have an interesting model. It's a blended capital model. So we bring in different types of capital, from impact investors, from individuals who want to make the world a better place. We're talking with a number of development banks right now, and what we've found is that in order to attract capital to high-risk markets, it's necessary to create a blended finance stack. So what that means is that we've created what's called a donor advised fund to be able to take on philanthropic capital. So if people already have a donor advised fund, or if people want to contribute and receive a tax benefit from putting their money into a 501c3, we have an entity that we're working with so that we can take on philanthropic capital contributions, which helps to ease some of the risks that are associated with investing in projects in Haiti. And then we're also accepting equity as well as debt. And that philanthropic cushion helps to protect against natural disasters or instability or anything that could go wrong in these markets. And so our model in Haiti has been to work with a variety of different organizations to source funding from, and we're growing our capital stack right now. So we are accepting contributions into the DAF, and we're also in conversations around equity and debt. And in terms of the business model implementation, it's really threefold. So sourcing the capital that's appropriate for the projects. In some cases, when we're working with communities that don't have a large source of revenue, the project is majority grant funded up front, and then the community can just help to pay for the ongoing operations and maintenance. In places where we're working with a more commercially established entity, like with a large hospital, they may raise the capital to fund the project on their own. And in cases where we're working with a Haitian business, we can source financing so that they can pay an electricity bill every single month. So it's structured more like a car payment, like a lease or a mortgage, where they're paying back the principal plus interest, and we return a portion of interest back to our investors. So it really, in these frontier markets and working with new business models that are impact first, I think it's important to have a lot of creativity around what we can do with traditional finance models to really make sure that we're applying capital where it's helping people and not harming them.
Okay, and so I'm sure it's a challenge enough, juggling all those different things and actually getting that investment on the ground, and you're actually working there in Haiti, and that's fabulous. What's the response been? I mean, are you working with a local government? Is it more the national government that knows what you're up to? Or like, how are you sort of integrating with the people of Haiti? Can they see what you're doing here, sort of empowering them? How does that work?
We're working with a number of different parties. So ranging from local partners on the installer level. So we have our trusted solar installers that we work with, and then we bring on more people for each job that we're doing. For our women's solar installer training program, we're working with Haiti Tech University, which is one of the leading tech schools in Haiti, and helping their students to get field experience. Then on the project level, we're talking directly with Haitian business owners. And sometimes when the project is on a larger municipal level, then we'll talk with the mayor or the leaders within that province. And on the Haitian government level, we are collaborating with the Ministry of Energy of Haiti, which is working with the World Bank. And they actually have a series of RFPs coming out for microgrids in Haiti. So there's some financing available right now to try and move towards renewable energy microgrids in places that there's absolutely no electricity right now. So that's an initiative that will be continuing next year. And we've been in multiple conversations with the Haitian Ministry of Energy as well as the World Bank on helping to move that initiative forward.
Okay, so COVID's out there, and there's not a lot of travel going on. You had to pull back from one of your projects. I think you got it done, which was fantastic. But short to mid-term, do you realistically think you won't be able to do the work, or is work still going on with local people? I mean, like, what's the next 6 months for you?
We're doubling down actually, and I think that social entrepreneurs have been training for this moment, because when we see a problem, when something is difficult in the world and we see strife, we run towards it and figure out solutions. And we're used to trying to do a lot with very little, with limited resources and with great challenges. And so our strategy in Haiti right now of working with healthcare facilities is moving forward very quickly. There's been a lot of funding that's been reallocated towards helping the hospitals dealing with COVID to receive energy storage for ventilators, to help these hospitals get off of diesel generators. If you think about diesel fumes attacking people's respiratory systems, that's the last thing that you want when there's this respiratory pandemic that's happening. And so helping hospitals to get not only reduced diesel generator dependence, but also to reduce their costs and reliance on imported diesel into the country. It just helps them gain more resilience and more energy independence, and to utilize a local resource, the sun. So our activity has really been accelerated in Haiti, especially in terms of helping hospitals and clinics to prepare for COVID and to fortify their resources. And hopefully, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we'll be helping more businesses that have been in our pipeline to get onto clean energy and off of diesel.
Okay, so Haiti's keeping you very busy, but you have this ideology that you would like other countries to pick up on. What does that mean for you? Are there some target countries that you're already communicating with? What's next in that regards?
Absolutely. We're doing a lot of market analysis right now in terms of synthesizing all of our learning and experience in Haiti and being able to move into our next market. So the other places in the world that have extremely high energy poverty are sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. So we're doing some market surveys. We're talking with potential partners in those markets, and I'm also very interested in working with tribal heritage lands and Native American reservations in the United States. You would be absolutely amazed. People have probably seen the headlines around the Navajo Nation being incredibly hard hit by the COVID crisis. And when you visit reservations, there's oftentimes no electricity, no running water. It is crazy the amount of inequality that still exists within this country. And I'm definitely interested in helping on projects closer to home as well.
Well, we could use. I'm actually based in Tucson, Arizona, so just familiar with all this, and I'm just. It's amazing that all the tribes really don't have complete solar. I mean, Arizona, right? And the state, in some ways, has been very supportive until recently about encouraging individual solar on homes and such. But it's just, yeah, with tribal, certainly a gap there. So please come in and share your expertise that we get more uptick in that.
All right, I'll be knocking on your door as soon as the pandemic's over.
All right, anytime soon. Well, yeah, I think there's probably a lot of interest, and I wonder, is there a kind of learning back? I mean, you mentioned maybe coming back, working with tribes and such, but this whole notion of making solar affordable, because you even think about the U.S. market, even individual, a lot of people aren't getting it because it's $25,000 to put solars on your home, and a lot of states really don't make it easy enough for people to do solar. I'm wondering if there's a model that you're kind of working with that encourages a lot more, even in the United States, because I think we do sort of a poor job with it.
Yeah, it's really one of the challenges in the United States is that legislation is on a state by state basis. So while federally there is an investment tax credit for solar, the implementation of programs largely have to do with the confluence of utilities friendliness towards renewable energy integration and state legislation that either helps or hinders solar adoption. And you're seeing some states that have friendly legislation where people can get zero down and immediately start saving. You're really seeing solar balloon in those economies and to overall help the utility to reduce their loads on dirty fossil fuels, and building new generation capacity. And so the states where there's coherent legislation to help people adopt solar, it's really moving quickly. And in states where there's not, then it's very clear. The market signals aren't there. And the DOE has recently announced that they're going to be pursuing a program to help community solar in more regions. So basically, a community solar for all platform, which was begun under Obama and is hopefully continuing. And so that could be really exciting because community solar enables people to get together who may not even own their house. So maybe renters or people who otherwise would have a barrier to achieving solar, and they can pool together and get a solar installation somewhere on a mall or a carport or a containerized storage facility, somewhere with a lot of roof space. And those electrons are going into the grid, and then you can claim them for your home. So basically, your electricity is being offset by generation on a facility that's not using that much electricity. So the assets can be pooled. And I'm particularly interested in shared ownership models where the wealth is being returned to the community. So imagine in Arizona, if there was a giant solar farm on the Navajo Nation where the Navajo community was benefiting from that, individuals could invest into that installation and receive some benefits. And it would help to offset fossil fuels on the entire grid and get more renewable energy electrons into the mix. So looking at places where there are market anomalies, and hopefully we'll be seeing some legislation coming down the pipeline that will make it more friendly in markets that have had slow adoption because of those barriers.
Okay, so we're at the end of the episode. This has been fascinating. And just, I guess, if you have any sort of final words in regards, if there's even investors watching this, like if they're interested in learning more about what you're up to, what would you recommend to people kind of to dig in what you're doing?
Check out our website. It's 10pwr.com. Follow us on social media. You can reach out to us. Hello at 10pwr.com. I'd love to talk with anybody who's interested in learning more. And spread the meme, hashtag fourth world development.
Love it. All right. Well, I want you to stay on. We're going to just go into just chatting for a few minutes here. But as you keep doing this work, we love having people back on again, maybe talking about a particular case study. So look at Cimpatico as a platform for you to share your message. But I definitely appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much. My pleasure.
All right. So hold on. We'll be right back.